Greetings, everyone, and happy May. Welcome to this month's Director's Corner. It is a glorious day, and we are smack dab in the middle of spring. Birds are chirping, flowers are in bloom, and the sun is shining. May Day celebrations and May festivals are common occurrences throughout the history of public schools here in Washington, D.C. Images and mentions can be found all throughout the collection. Please view the newsletter in its entirety for examples. I am outside of the main entrance of Charles Sumner School Museum and Archives. As mentioned in previous editions of the newsletter, we are celebrating 35 years of existence as the official museum and archives of the DC public school system. Next year, the historic Sumner School building will turn 150. We celebrate and honor the history and legacy of this significant African American heritage site. In conjunction with the building's renovation that started almost 4 decades ago, the building was designated as a site on the National Register for Historic Places. You can see our plaque right here to my right. May is also National Preservation Month, with this year's focus on telling the full American story. With its origins in 1872, the historic Sumner School exists as the oldest standing unaltered public school building in the United States, designed and built specifically to educate African American children. This building serves as a special place and a site of great significance here in the nation's capital and resonates both nationally and globally. Want to know a little more about this historic building and how it was saved from demolition? Come on inside with me to learn more. Thank you for joining me inside here at the Charles Sumner School Museum and Archives. I am located on the third floor in the Great Hall. This hall is actually named for founding director Richard L. Herbert. So this is the Herbert Memorial Hall. When this school was designed and completed in 1872, this space was always meant to be one of community and for gatherings. So many other schools have ceremonies and events here, including the graduation of the first public high school for African American students happened right here in this room. That was the Preparatory School for Colored Youth. The year was 1877, and the keynote address was given by none other than Frederick Douglass. In addition to that, there's lots of historic things that happen in this particular room and also in this school. There's so much historic relevance to this school. Another noted event that happened here is it is said that Duke Ellington, who recently had a birthday, performed his second to last concert in this building prior to the renovation. So the question that you ask is, why would this building be slated for demolition with all of this rich history? And the question is really pretty clear. Back in the 1970s, there was not a historic review board here in DC. It was pretty common nationwide that if a building fell into disrepair due to age, that it could be raised, it could be demolished, and then another development project could take over. And that was customary. That is what was happening without any real consideration of the history of the building. So Sumner School was at risk in the 1970s. A little over 100 years after the existence of this school, the roof collapsed in this very room that I'm sitting in. And when the roof collapsed, it was scheduled to be demolished. The wrecking ball was coming, and it was on the schedule to no longer exist. Again, if you've been following us, you know how significant this site is. And because of its significance, Richard L. Herbert, of which this room is named for, he worked in DC Public Schools, and he was also the Historic Preservation Officer for the District of Columbia Public Schools. He understood the history of this building and understood the relevance to African American history, educational history, all of these things. He actually threatened to stand on the rooftop when the wrecking ball came. Now, that is a true story that he made that threat, but I like to emphasize that he backed up this threat by taking action. And that action was organizing grassroots effort to save this building. So there were other players involved. What ended up happening ultimately is our request for proposal went out to come up with a project and some meaning for this space. And ultimately, what ended up happening is Boston Properties, which was a relatively new private development company, they won the bid and still exist as collaborators in making sure this building is properly maintained and preserved. In addition, another player in this whole renovation piece was Metropolitan Ame Church, which is right at 15th and M Street, just a block away from us. And they formerly owned this land. There was a school that sat here prior to this public school that was built that was made out of old barracks material and was pulled together to educate Black people post-emancipation. So Metropolitan was involved. It was just really a full-out beautiful partnership, if you will. So it's the city of DC, this private entity, and also this community organization being Metropolitan Ame Church. So at the end of all of this planning, it was decided that this site would serve as the official museum and repository for DC Public Schools. So the function of the building over the past 35 years has been that of a visual arts galleries here, many traveling exhibitions that pertain to various aspects of history, in particular pertaining to African American history. We have a research library here that was built on the foundation of the Board of Education meeting minutes. It continues to grow, and we're just so very thankful to Richard L. Herbert and many other predecessors before me, Nancy Suggs, who was a director before me, and all of the other people involved with putting boots on the ground, raising their voices, and advocating to save this building. So as we look towards or look back and reflect on 35 years, we're looking towards the future. We're looking forward to celebrating 150 years next year. I just want to speak to you all and thank you for supporting the museum. Thank you for having an interest in doing scholarship in the archives. Thank you for attending events. Thank you for subscribing to our newsletter. I just really want to tell you just how much it means that you all support this museum, that you all understand the value of preserving the history of DC public education. What they did in the 1980s to come up with this concept is also very pioneering and trailblazing. So we want to continue to blaze that path and continue to sustain the future of this historic building. So thank you for hanging out with me today outside. You learned a little bit about us being on the National Register for Historic Places, and I'm glad to be able to bring you inside the space as we are still currently closed, but hope to be able to see you all soon in person in the near future. And I look forward to seeing you next month in June. Have a wonderful May.